And now we're going to continue with Michelle. Michelle has been part of Tech Lab since 2019. She is our project coordinator, and it helps with sales and marketing as well. So she's my right-hand person, and we thank Michelle profusely. Michelle is going to be presenting on routers today, and how they work and go from there.
Okay, let's see. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. You just get this thing started. There we go. So today I'm going to be talking to you guys about routers. So the first question that I want to answer is, what is a router? If you're anything like I was before I started learning about technology, there were just random boxes in your house that your internet service provider drops off at your house, and you're like, I have no idea what these things are. I have no idea how these things work. Usually it's 2 boxes they drop off, but sometimes it's just the one. And those 2 boxes that they drop off are typically your router and your modem. Sometimes those are one device, but more likely than not, they're 2. So what the modem does is the modem provides the internet connection. That's what's like wired into the public internet. So that's how you get internet into your place. Now, what it provides is access to the public internet. What your router does is create your internet network, and it protects your internet network, your devices, from the public internet. So basically what this means is that if you were receiving your internet directly from your modem and you didn't have a router, you would be a lot more vulnerable to hackers. So if you're using a router, on the other hand, and you're much more likely to be protected. So the router in most homes creates your wireless network. But it can also create your Ethernet network, depending on what you're doing. At the most basic level, these 2 devices will create your entire internet network. But there are a lot of other devices that can be put into your internet network to extend your range, for example. So we talked about on the previous slide about how routers will create your internet network. Every single router will also have a firewall that will be operating. Some routers, as we talked about on the previous slide, will create that wireless network for you, but again, not all routers do. Higher end routers, such as business class or enterprise class routers, can be configured to provide network monitoring, content filtering, antivirus and malware scanning capabilities, and VPN capabilities, among other things. So what that means is that if there's any kind of hacking going on, it can watch out for that and check, and it can let you know if something like that's happening. And if you don't want anybody on your network to be looking at porn sites, it can block that for you. And if you are wanting to access stuff on your network while you're away from your network with a VPN, you're able to do that. Now, I do want to say is that if you guys have been attending any of the Ask the Techsperts for a while now, you'll say, oh, you know what? We talked about antivirus and anti-malware. I got that on my computer. I don't need that on my router. You probably do. I want to say that this is like when we talk about cybersecurity, is a both and proposition usually. We put security on all levels so that we can make it less likely that there's any problems in the future. More expensive routers may also provide greater speed or range of Wi-Fi. So now I want to tell you guys what you need to know about routers. So on the back of every router, there is a plug for an Ethernet cable. If your computer has an Ethernet port, not all computers do, so check your computer before running out and buying an Ethernet cable. you can plug your computer directly into the router to get the speed of the internet that's coming from your router. So if the farther away you get from your router, the more likely it is that, you know, the speed of your internet is going to degrade. And especially if there's like floors or walls or anything between it. So if you plug directly into it, you're going to get that potentially higher speed internet. I want to mention though is be sure you know which device you're plugging into before doing this, because if you plug into your modem and do the same thing, you're losing that protection of your network. You're losing that protection of your router, and that is not a good plan. So definitely plug into the back of the router. In generally speaking, routers will last for 4 to 5 years. After that, you can either replace it or you can ask your ISP, your internet service provider, for a replacement. With a router, you'll get the strongest Wi-Fi signal if the router is placed in the middle of your house. I do want to say that if your internet service provider is the one who has provided your router, they should be providing that replacement router at no charge to you. So that's why I'm saying ask your ISP for a replacement. So now I want to talk about the route of buying your own router. So your internet service provider, if you look at your bill very carefully and you did not buy your own router, you'll see there's a charge somewhere on there that's saying that's about somewhere around $10 a month. If you want to get rid of that charge, or if you want to add some additional features on your router, you can go ahead and buy your own router. On the other hand, I do want to say the internet service providers are not always the most honest people. So if you do buy your own router, still check your bill and make sure that you're not being charged for the router by the internet service provider. When we talk about what kind of a router that you might want to purchase, in terms of manufacturers, we would recommend Netgear, Cisco, or Linksys routers. We found those manufacturers to be making stable and reliable products that work. We've never had a problem with any of them. We don't really recommend buying the cheapest thing you can get, because it's likely that that may cause some of your internet problems. But you may not need all of the highest end features either. But then again, you'll need to take a look at your own situation to figure out what you want. If you buy your own router, you will need to configure it and maintain it. If you have it coming from your ISP, they will be configuring it, or they will be maintaining it for you and doing the initial configuration. The configuration for like the network monitoring, the content filtering, the VPN, and things like that we talked about earlier, that's not standard configuration. That's something that you need an IT provider for, like TechLab, typically, unless you want to do it yourself. So the way that you would, if you're going to try and configure it and maintain it yourself, you need to get into the router. So the way that you do this is you need to find out the IP address to the router. Now, oftentimes this is printed like somewhere on the router, like on a sticker or something like that, but you can also find it by going to command prompt on your computer, typing in ipconfig and hit enter. And then it prints out this long list at you, but if you look at the default gateway, that'll tell you the IP address that you need to go to. You take that IP address, wherever you found it, type it into your internet browser in the URL section, and then you'll need to sign in, and then you'll be able to look at the inside of the router. There'll be a lot of stuff in there. The one thing you'll be wanting to look for would be the firmware update, because the only recommended maintenance that we really recommend is that you need to update the firmware on your router once or twice during the lifetime of the router. If you've got an internet service provider, they're doing this for you usually, but yeah. So some questions that we often get asked about routers is, my internet, one example is like, my internet's really slow. Could my router be the problem? There are certain cases where the internet or the router is the problem for people, so I don't want to discount that. but it's hard to tell what's going on without like doing an actual analysis of your location. There are a lot of other problems that are possible that are can be causing slow internet, such as like interference. Like you've got a bunch of neighbors who also have all of these different devices and your Wi-Fi's are getting crowded out, or you've got like concrete or a brick house or like metal in your walls, and those things will destroy your wireless internet. Additionally, there could be problems on your ISP's level where they're like, somebody cut the line to the internet in your house, and so now you have no internet. There could be like some kind of an outage somewhere with your internet service provider. So definitely I would recommend that if you're having really slow internet and your internet service provider says that there's nothing that they can do for you, have an internet service provider or have a IT company like TechLab come out and do an analysis of your location. We offer this for free for people just to take a look at what's the next step. Another question that we often get is, I want to extend my network and I've heard that adding another router can help. And our answer to that one is that 2 routers is not a good plan to extend your network. We talked earlier about how routers will end up protecting your devices and they create your network. So basically what will happen is if you have 2 routers, you've got 2 separate networks. Now, say you stick one in the middle of one side of your house and say you stick the other on the other side of your house, right? And one happens to be by your printer and you just happen to be on the other side of the house. You're on a completely different network. So if you try and print to that printer now, it's not going to show up. Same is true if you're like trying to simulcast or anything like that. And then if you walk over to the other side of your house, with the device you're on, all of a sudden now you've got to switch networks. So there's other things that we would use instead to extend people's network. Typically we would use access points, but again, without taking a look at your situation, not sure what would make the most sense. Okay, so that's what I got for you guys today.